Originally confiscated by the government for upsetting, which is fun, so you guys have a fun time with it. Alright. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves to the Negro streets at dawn looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters burning for the ancient heavenly connections of starry dynamo in the machinery of night. Who poverty and tatters and hollow-eyed and high sat up smoking in the supernatural darkness of the water clouds, floating across the tops of cities, contemplating jazz. Who bared their brains to heaven under the L and saw Mohammedan angels staggering on tenement roofs illuminating. Who passed through universities with radiant cool eyes, hallucinating Arkansas and Blake-like tragedy among the scholars of Florida. Who were expelled from the academies for crazy and publishing obscene oaths on the windows of the skull. Who cowered in unshaven rooms in underwear, burning their money in wastebaskets and listening to the terror through the wall. Who got busted in their pubic beards, returning through Laredo with a belt of marijuana for New York. Who ate fire in paint hotels or drank turpentine in Paradise Alley, death or purgatory their torsos night after night. With dreams, with drugs, with waking nightmares, alcohol and cock and endless balls. Incomparable blind streets of shuddering cloud and lightning in the mind, leaping toward poles of Canada and Patterson, illuminating all the motionless world of time between. Peyote solidities of halls, backyard green tree cemetery dawns, wine drunkenness over the rooftops, storefront burrows of key-head joyride neon blinking traffic light, sun and moon and tree vibrations in the roaring winter dusts of Brooklyn, ashcan rantings, and a kind ting light of mind. Who chain themselves to subways for the endless ride from Battery to Holy Brahms, on Benzedrine until the noise of wheels and children brought them down, shuddering, mouth-racked and battered, bleak of brain, all drained of brilliance in the drear light of the tube. Who sank all night in the submarine light of Bickford's floated out and sank through the stale beer afternoon in desolate Fugazi, listening to the crack of doom on the hydrogen jukebox. Who talked continuously, 70 hours from park to pad to bar to Bellevue to museum to the Brooklyn Bridge. A lost battalion of platonic conversationalists jumping down the stoops, off fire escapes, off windsills, off the Empire State, out of the moon. Yakety-yakking, screaming, vomiting, whispering facts and memories and anecdotes and eyeball kicks and shocks of hospitals and jails and wars. Who whole intellects disgorged in total recall for 7 days and nights with brilliant eyes, meet for the synagogue cast on the pavement. Who vanished into nowhere Zen, New Jersey, leaving a trail of ambiguous picture postcards of Atlantic City Hall, suffering Eastern sweats and Tangerinian bone grindings and migraines of China under junk withdrawal in Newark's bleak furnished room. Who wandered around and around at midnight in the railroad yard, wondering where to go and when, leaving no broken hearts. Who lit cigarettes in boxcars racketing through snow toward lonesome farms and grandfather night. Who studied Claudius Poe, St. John of the Cross, telepathy, and Bob Kabbalah because the cosmos instinctively vibrated at their feet in Kansas. Who wandered through the streets of Idaho seeking visionary Indian angels who were visionary Indian angels. Who thought they were only mad when Baltimore gleamed in supernatural ecstasy. Who jumped in limousines with the Chinamen of Oklahoma in the impulse of winter midnight streetlight small town rain. Who lounged hungry and lonesome through Houston seeking jazz or sex or soup, and followed the brilliant Spaniard to converse about America and eternity, a hopeless task, and so took ship to Africa. Who disappeared into the volcanoes of Mexico, leaving behind nothing but the shadow of dungarees and the lava and ash of poetry scattered in Fireplace, Chicago. Who reappeared on the West Coast investigating the FBI in beards and shorts with big pacifist eyes, sexy in their dark skin, passing out incomprehensible leaflets. Who burned cigarette holes in their arms, protesting the narcotic tobacco haze of capitalism. Who distributed super communist pamphlets in Union Square, weeping and undressing while the sirens of Los Alamos wailed them down, and wailed down Wall, and the Staten Island ferry also wailed. who broke down crying in white gymnasiums naked and trembling before the machinery of other skeletons, who bit detectives in the neck and shrieked with delight in police cars for committing no crime but their own wild cooking, pederasty, and intoxication, who howled on their knees in the subway and were dragged off the roof, waving genitals and manuscripts, who let themselves be fucked in the ass by saintly motorcyclists and screamed with joy, who flew and were blown by those human seraphim, the sailors, caresses of the Atlantic and Caribbean love, who bawled in the morning and evenings in rose gardens and the grass of public parks and cemeteries, scattering their semen freely to whoever come who may, who hiccuped endlessly, trying to giggle, but wound up with a sob behind the partition in a Turkish bath, when a blonde and naked angel came to pierce them with a sword, who lost their love voice to the three old shrews of fate, the one-eyed shrew of the heterosexual dollar, the one-eyed shrew that winks out of the womb, and the one-eyed shrew that does nothing but sit on her ass and snip the golden intellectual threads of the craftsman's loom, who copulated, ecstatic and insatiate, with a bottle of beer, a sweetheart, a package of cigarettes, a candle, and fell off the bed and continued along the floor and down the hall, and ended fainting on the wall with a vision of ultimate cunt and cum eluding the laxism of consciousness, who sweetened the snatches of a million girls trembling in the sunset, and were red-eyed in the morning but prepared to sweeten the snatch of the sunrise, flashing buttocks under barns and naked in the lake, who went out pouring through Chicago in myriad stolen night cars, North Carolina, secret hero of these poems, coxman and Adonis of Denver, joy to the memory of his innumerable lays of girls in empty lots and dinner backyards, movie houses, rickety roads, on mountaintops and caves, or with gaunt waitresses and familiar roadside lonely petticoat uplifting, and especially secret gas station solipsism of John's, and hometown alleys too, who faded out in vast sordid movies, were shifted in dreams, woke on a sudden Manhattan, and picked themselves up out of basements hung over with heartless decay and horrors of Third Avenue iron dreams, and stumbled to unemployment offices, who walked all night with their shoes full of blood on the snowbank, docks waiting for a door in the East River to open to a room full of steam heat and opium, who created great suicidal dramas on the apartment cliff banks of the Hudson under the wartime blue floodlight of the moon, and their heads shall be crowned with laurel in oblivion, who ate the lamb stew of the imagination or digested the crab at the muddy bottom of the rivers of Bowery, who wept at the romance of the streets with their pushcarts full of onions and bad music, who sat in boxes breathing in the darkness under the bridge, and rose up to build harpsichords in their lofts, who coughed on the 6th floor of Harlem, crowned with flame under the tubercular sky, surrounded by orange crates of theology, who scribbled all night rockin' and rollin' over lofty incantations which in the yellow morning were stanzas of gibberish, who cooked rotten animals, long, hard, feet, tail, borscht and tortillas, dreaming of pure vegetable kingdoms, who plunged themselves under meat trucks looking for an egg, who threw their watches off the roof to cast their ballot for eternity outside of time, and alarm clocks fell on their heads every day for the next decade, who cut their wrists 3 times successively unsuccessfully, gave up and were forced to open antique stores where they thought they were growing old and cried, who were burned alive in their innocent flannel suits on Madison Avenue amid blasts of leaden verse and the tanks of clutter of the iron regiments of fashion, and the nitroglycerin shrieks of the fairies of advertising and the mustard gas of sinister intelligent editors, or were run down by the drunken taxicabs of absolute reality, who jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge, this actually happened, and walked away unknown and forgotten into the ghostly days of Chinatown soup alleyways and fire trucks, not even one free beer, who sang out of their windows